From E. coli to salmonella, it seems a month doesn't go by without a meat recall.
For the first ever straight A report card, it was stir-fried beef fajita.
So-called downer cows, too sick to stand up, literally dragged into a California slaughterhouse.
And your average Wednesday will do just fine. Beef, it's what's for dinner.
We paid an independent lab to analyze 2 samples of 90% lean beef, one from a conventional store pack, the other grass-fed beef from Dr. Wisnit's farm. The results? In our tests, grass-fed beef was higher in protein and lower in fat and cholesterol.
Never fed feed with pesticides, never fed animal byproducts, never ever administered antibiotics or synthetic hormones.
Fleischers has become a real community. Most butcher shops in the old days always were. It's the one place that you would go every single week to buy something. And basically, so butchers always sort of knew what were happening with your family. They knew when your kids were sick, when they were graduating from college, all of those things. And Fleischers has become that real center for most of the people who buy from us. It's very often a very big social scene even. What we found is that people come to us for various reasons. We say that there are really 3 different kinds of customers. One customer comes to us for philosophical reasons. They're concerned about the ethical treatment of animals. They want to support the local community. They want to support the local farming community. Those are very, very important aspects of what we do. And one of the reasons that we started Fleischers. The second reason is that people come to us for health reasons. They themselves have had cancer. Their partner has had cancer. They're concerned about getting antibiotics and hormones in their diet. They their cardiologist told them that they can't eat beef anymore, and they want leaner, fat, less fatty beef, and that's what we have here. So those are health reasons that people come here. Also, because sometimes the wife might be a vegetarian, but the husband isn't, or her kids may not be, and so they want to provide the best possible meat to that person or those kids without compromising their own ideals. And then the third reason that people come here is because our steak, and I'll say this about the steak particularly, is the best they've ever tried. And so they're foodies, and they don't really care about the philosophical or ethical reasons or their health reasons, but they just know that our stuff tastes different and tastes better than anything they've ever had. Grass-fed beef in general, pastured beef in general, has a bigger, earthier, beefier taste. You can actually tell what the animals are eating just by tasting the steak alone. And it's leaner because the animals are actively walking around, and therefore it's healthier for you. You're getting all the nutrients that that animal's taking in, and also, since it is an active animal, there's not that huge buildup of fat that you get with factory farm beef. Most animals in this country are raised in what we call factory farms or industrial complexes, what that means is that all beef animals in this country are raised until they're about 4 to 6 months old on pasture, and then they're brought into a feedlot situation. Feedlots there are usually about 20 animals to a particular very small enclosure. There's no grass. The animals are fed intensively grain or corn specifically. These are ruminant animals, meaning that they have multitudes of stomachs and they chew their cud, try to, they digest it. These are not animals that were made to eat that amount of grain, and because of that they have to be fed hormones and antibiotics so that they don't get sick. They're fed those hormones and antibiotics prophylactically, in other words, even before they get sick, so that they don't get sick, because the situation that they're put in will make them immediately sick. They're also standing probably up to their knees or thighs in feces, in manure, because there's really no place for it to go. These are not animals that have any access to grass or the great outdoors as we know it.
Hi, I'm Vicki Koenig. I'm a nutritionist. I have a master's in nutrition. I'm a registered dietitian, which is a national credential. And I'm in the state of New York, I'm a certified dietitian nutritionist, which that's how New York State looks at it. And I'm going to talk today about beef and diet and nutrition in a big perspective of how of making good choices with our food. I'm often asked what I eat, and since this documentary is about beef, you might ask, do I eat beef? And the answer would be yes, but rarely. Pun, playing words a little bit, but when I do eat beef, and it's not that often, I'm going to know where I got it. I'm going to make a conscious effort to be sure that I choose beef from a good source. Certain criteria that I look at are where was it raised? Did they use antibiotics or hormones when they raised it? I'm going to choose not. I prefer grass-fed beef. There is no legal definition of what grass-fed means, like through the government. They don't look at that. But you can ask where you're buying the beef or the people who are producing it, what does it mean to you to have grass-fed beef? It could mean that the livestock, the cows graze, and then at the very end of their life they're fed grain, which certainly will fatten them up a bit. So there's an advantage to doing that. And then there are some companies that are completely grass-fed and grass-finished. That's what that would be called. The advantages of eating beef that has been where the livestock has had the ability to graze is they eat more greens, and their diet is higher in essential fatty acids, and so therefore their meat is higher in essential fatty acids. And in the developed world, in the U.S., there's a we could do a whole documentary on essential fatty acids and the balance and the change in fat and how people eat differently than in the last 50 and 100 years ago. And simply what I would say is when you eat beef that has grazed and is higher in essential fatty acids in its muscle and its meat, that's a better balance for you. The alternative is if you eat more of a commercial beef, is that beef has been raised on corn, and so it's a different composition of fats in a sense and less desirable. The whole picture about beef is that beef has a carbon footprint. What does that mean? Well, it means that how you raise your animals affects the environment, and it makes a difference. So there's both a health aspect, talked a little bit about fats, and there's also a carbon footprint. Basically what you're going to see when you eat commercially raised beef is that it's a very complex ecosystem. For one product, you've got to grow the grain, you've got to, which is a monoculture, usually you're going to grow corn, and it's genetically modified, there's pesticide use, and there's a lot of water and chemicals to grow that, and then that's going to feed the livestock, and then there's in the way they're grown, they're inhabited, that there's more waste. It's not that grass-fed beef is going to have less waste, it's just going to fit into our environment better because it's a smaller system, and there's benefits to that. So if I'm going to support a farmer who's raising beef in my region, then that land is going to be used for farming, and that increases my quality of life. So it's a big benefit in that respect as well. Basically in 2007, the UN, which was put out a report that showed that livestock are one of the most significant contributors to today's most serious environmental problems. And this was put out by the Soil and Agriculture Department of the UN. And it was called Livestock's Long Shadow. And what it showed is that the carbon footprint of growing beef and livestock had a greater carbon output than fossil fuels, like from transportation. That's huge. So the recommendation is to eat less meat, to have smaller portions, to have more of a 3-ounce portion instead of, you know, your 16-ounce steak when you eat out in a restaurant, or have more vegetarian meals and keep your portion size, but eat it less often. The other aspect of meat, this is from a presentation that I did on the green and sustainable diet in the Hudson Valley. The other aspect of meat nutritionally is that it's associated, you know, diet that's high in red meat and processed meat from cold cuts, pork, etc. It's associated with dying prematurely and more degenerative diseases like heart disease and cancer. So that's an important nutrition aspect. There's lots of lean cuts of meat that can be as lean as chicken or poultry. You just have to know what they are. What you would see in some of the other documentaries about food production is pretty scary. You know, in terms of boom, 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 boom. There's, you know, no space. They never see the light of day. It's mechanized. It's pretty awful. You mentioned natural. There is no government definition of natural. And so if somebody says it's natural beef, what does that mean? You have no idea unless you investigate yourself. So organic, you have a guarantee in terms of these are specific standards that they must maintain, and natural, you don't know that. Same with the definition of grass-fed, so you have to ask. And the more aware people are, I think, the better.
Ask yourself, do you know what beef is? Come on.